Welcome to the Martial Arts Lifestyle Podcast, where we talk with martial arts practitioners about their histories and the influence that their practice of martial arts has on their lives. You are listening to the free version of this podcast, which is abbreviated. Help support this program by considering to subscribe to us on Patreon, where you will get 4 full-length podcasts each month, 1 week before the YouTube release date. The cost is that of about 1 coffee shop coffee per month. Go to www.patreon.com/malmag to subscribe. That is www.patreon.com/malmag. If you would like to purchase single full-length episodes of the Martial Arts Lifestyle Podcast, visit our Gumroad page at malmag.gumroad.com, and that is malmag.gumroad.com. In this episode, I sit down with retired canine cop Steve Holley, and he discusses his history as well as, in his experience, what the best martial arts are practically in the field for police work. The answers may surprise you. Sit back and enjoy. Welcome to the Martial Arts Lifestyle Podcast, and today's guest is someone I've known for quite a long time, and is actually in the first group of FMA and JKD training that I did. Very interesting guy who's been a career law enforcement officer, and kind of one of the fun ones. He had a dog with him. He's a canine guy, and he's got a very interesting martial arts background, and I think you guys would be very interested in learning about it. So welcome to the show, Steve Holley.
Hey, how's it going?
All right. So Steve, how did you get started in martial arts?
Well, that would have been 1968. I was 13 years old. There were two kinds of gangs of kids in my neighborhood, and I ran afoul of both of them because I'm a genius, and I am, as my wife has described me, goody two shoes. So I saw these guys, and they were shoplifting from the local 7-Eleven, and I knew that was wrong. So I looked up at the clerk and said, "Hey, mister, they're stealing." Of course, they bolted out of the 7-Eleven, and then from that point on, I was the goat. I was the guy that got picked on all the time. And to be fair, I was a pretty chubby kid. I mean, I know my mom said that I had big bones, but let's face it, I was fat. So, and I'd never stuck with anything, baseball, football, nothing, Boy Scouts, nothing ever stuck with me. So I was leading a pretty solitary existence, and I was going past Presley Park in Clearwater, and there were these guys out there in what looked to be white pajamas doing all sorts of weird and interesting looking things. And I thought, I want to be a part of that. I don't know what it is, but I like it. So I went over and I sat there, and at 13, I was like 5'10", maybe 200 pounds. So I was a big kid, which is kind of fortunate because my first sensei didn't teach children. He had a non-commercial dojo. If you didn't like what he taught, you could get gone. He didn't care. So he saw me watching, and he came over, probably assessed that I was 16, not 13, and said, "Would you like to learn?" I said, "Yes." So he taught me Kiwadachi, horse stance, and Seikensuki, 4-fist thrust, right? And that's what I did for an hour. I stayed in horse stance until I couldn't take it anymore and fell down, but I never gave up. I came home and told my parents about it. Later on, they told me they thought, well, this will never last because nothing ever did. And I couldn't move the next morning. Oh dear God, I could still remember the pain. And then they were convinced. But he had classes Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and the next training class I was there. And this went on. I mean, I got taught very basic rudimentary things like Seikensuki, and how to shift into a reverse punch, but very, very limited things. And I realize now he was testing to see if I would get bored and give up. But something clicked in my head and said, nope, this is where I need to be. This is something I need to do. And from then on, bear in mind, it's 1968, so we had Black Belt magazine and a few books, but not much. There wasn't much in the way of certainly not what we have today with all of the content on the internet, DVDs, everything we've got
Oh,
now.
yeah, overload.
Yeah, it's what kind of advantage and disadvantage, because I couldn't go to my sensei with stupid questions like, well, how about this? Because I didn't know. And it was very, very strict Shotokan. And when I say strict, I went to a tournament when I got to be like third kyu, first brown belt, and I sat there in the stands and I watched people doing kata, and I was horrified. It was so sloppy compared to what I was used to, because I mean, if you were off like a millimeter, you got corrected. So it was kind of a wake-up call, and it took me about 4 years, a little under 4 years, to get my first degree black belt. And from then on, I studied various arts and various people. The highest ranking I have is a Godan, 5th degree black belt in Okinawan Goju-ryu. My lineage runs through Teruyo Chinen Sensei, and he was actually one of the last people in with Chojun Miyagi. So it still kind of freaks me out that I'm only 2 people removed from the founder of Goju-ryu.
Wow.
It's kind of weird. But I've every place that I've been, I've kind of sought out different things. I've studied when I was out in California. I studied 7-star mantis, some cholefoot, some honga. Went through a period of time where I did a lot of Chinese stuff. And then I met our mutual instructor, Lauren Bookbinder, which one of the most happenstance meetings, because there's a guy named Steve Droppe. And I don't know if you remember this guy, P. Greg.
I hadn't even thought of that name since you for a long time. Wow.
Yeah. But there's this guy that and he used to have tapes in the back of Inside Kung Fu called Fear No Man. And his name was P. Greg Allen. And I had ordered a couple of tapes from him because I was interested in this. And when Steve was talking to him, he said, there's somebody down there in your neck of the woods. And Steve had hooked up with Lauren, and all 3 of us met on a rainy Saturday out at Ben T. Davis Beach in Tampa. And we worked out that every Saturday morning we would just get together and work on stuff, whatever we wanted, drills and I was the newbie, I didn't really know much Kali at all. Drape's background was basically Praceless style Arnis. Was Inosanto Lacosta. And so I got the best of those 2 worlds. And he eventually went on to work with Bo Sayak from Sayak Family Artists.
Oh, okay.
So I got the best of those worlds. And I remember Lauren got very, very frustrated with my kind of haphazard footwork, because my footwork was kind of stiff by Filipino standards, right?
Mm-hmm.
The female-male triangle. I was not used to that. I was used to either Chinese or Japanese Okinawan types systems. So he showed me how to do the female triangle, how it shifts you out of the way of an incoming angle 1 or angle 2, and then he said, okay, I'm going to swing an angle 1 and then an angle 2, and it's going to be your job to do the correct footwork, and if you don't, you're going to get hit. And I said, okay. He said, and remember, hurting is helping. So he proceeded to do that, and lo and behold, after I got hit a couple of times, I did in fact learn how to do that footwork.
That's funny. I remember Lauren calling it the stick and the carrot. So apparently you got a bit of stick.
Yes, yes, yeah. There's a lot of that in the early days.
That's really
We did that for another person that joined us was Ray Dionaldo when Ray was a student at
Mhm.
University of South Florida. Uh, uh, Sometimes Ray and I would get there early, and we'd be like, "Let's try this, let's try that," whatever. He's one of the most physically talented martial artists I've ever met. He's extremely smooth.
Mhm.
He showed up one day with um, a knife that he had made. I was like, "Hey, how much do you want for that knife?" He said, "Well, that's the first one I've ever made." He said, "I want to keep that." He said, "But I'll make you one." And I think he charged me like $15 to make this knife. And here it is, the
Oh
second,
wow. Oh, it's a
uh,
trainer. Yeah,
yeah,
okay.
the
That's really
second trainer he ever made.
wow.
And then I said, "Hey, can you make these? Can you make like swords?" And he said, "Sure." So he made me a couple of swords. I think he charged me $45 for two of them, which would
Wow.
be super cheap. Um, and Lauren's got those now because his birthday rolled around. I didn't have anything to give him, but I said, "Hey, you know what? I got these swords." I think he probably.
That's cool. Yeah, I remember he had yeah, I think I remember him having a set of that.
Yeah, they're too pretty. They're too pretty to use for contact.
To bang up. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
Demos.
Really well crafted. That's really cool. So I think for the people who are listening, if you're not familiar with the area, we're talking about Florida. We're talking about like the Tampa area of Florida, which you kind of answered a question I had about like where you grew up. I knew I knew you from that area, but I wasn't sure that you were originally from.
I was born in St. Pete and raised in Clearwater. And then, of course, I spent 23 years in police work at Fargo. So a lot of my life centered right around there.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it sounds like you started your police work at age 13, stopping shoplifters.
Yeah, yeah. That, if I'd only known. The the right part of that is that after about a year of training, um, I consciously tried to avoid these guys, and but then one day I just couldn't, and one spinning back kick later, and they left me alone. It's
Interesting
like
how that
it's amazing.
it's funny how that was something back in the day because that's essentially I think how I dealt with a potential bully too was a spinning heel hook kick, and I couldn't imagine that being something that would work today that well.
Oh well, the thing is, at least back in those days, no one expected that.
Right, yeah,
It's like no one expects the Spanish Inquisition. Well, nobody expects the spinning hook kick.
right, exactly, exactly. um which is funny, it might actually work a little now because I guess people aren't expecting that at the moment. They've seen it maybe, but they're not expecting it.
Right.
Because I saw that. What was it? There was some MMA match where a dude actually did the Mayalu Capasso from Capoeira and knocked the dude out. And you're like,
Oh my
oh,
God, yeah.
yeah,
I mean, his kicks were like sides. They were like that Bong Suhan Hapkido kick that would rip you off your feet.
right. Yeah, exactly. That was pretty amazing. That's really cool. So, what drew you into law enforcement then?
Well, I was a pre-med student, um, and I had good grades, but I was running out of cash, and I was teaching part time at a friend's dojo, and one of the guys that worked out there um, was going through PASS, the police applicant screening system, and he asked me, "Hey, would you go with me?" And I was like, "Yeah, why not?" So I said, "Yeah, I got a free day." He was kind of nervous going. I said, "Sure, yeah, I'll go." And so I went there, and we went through the all the rigmarole, and like a year later, when I was running short of funds for college, the city of Largo called up and said, hey, would you like a job? And my first thought was, well, I could do this police thing for a year or so, get some money ahead, and then I could, go back and get my degree. Well, what I found out was that um, not only did I enjoy putting bad people in cages, really good at it. And I found that everybody finds something that fits them eventually, right? And that was my fit. I got people, and I'm not sure that's true today, but back then the idea was service, not that you were a warrior or anything like that. The idea was that you were a servant, you're a civil servant. Like think Reed and McCoy from One Atom 12 as opposed to Hondo Harrelson from SWAT, right? It's just
Right.
two different ways of looking at it. And I really looked in my entire career. I really looked on police work as as a as a privilege because I got to meet people sometimes on what it was the worst day of their lives, and I got to make that better. I got to make things better, at least in my little corner of the world. I got to do something good and something that I found fulfilling. And there were bad days. You don't handle a child sex battery or murdered kid and walk away unscathed. There's stuff I carry around in my head to this day that nobody really should. But by and large, throughout my 36 years, uh, I did as much good as I possibly could do, and I feel pretty good about myself for that.
Wow, that's really amazing. It's interesting, I think, to talk to um I guess you guys would be insulted by this, but old timer cops, because you call each other
Here we do.
that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Because there is a definite different feel from guys that serve, as policemen decades ago as opposed to now.
There
There's definitely, I mean, there's a different atmosphere. I mean, that's pretty obvious out there right now. I mean, there's not that certain things were probably any different back then as to now, but certainly there's perceptions on both sides of the thin blue line, I guess we're going to call it, that are different now than in the past. A little bit more on edge, I guess we could say. Maybe I don't know.
Yeah, and some of that is, and I kind of participated in that because back in the '80s, we started with the Caliber Press Street Survival seminars, and I was involved in that because I was always heavily involved in training. And initially, I think it was a really good idea because people's ideas of tactics were not good in a lot of cases, and they were taught haphazardly and not without any real backing. And so initially, I think that was really really good. But after a point, towards the end, I began to realize that we're we were training people to think that everyone was out to get them, and the i- the idea was almost that the police, it's us versus them, uh, and it felt more like you know training police officers being occupying force as opposed to being you know civil servants.
Hmm.
Um, and that's not every agency. Some agencies, like Largo, I tell people that there's at Largo now, and I've been gone from there since 2001, so 22 years. I tell people, I said, you don't have any idea how lucky you are because this is a really professional organization. They take their responsibilities seriously.
Hmm.
Yeah, and I have done police work out in the hinterlands, and it is different. It is not. It is not at all the same.
What? So I had good friends with a guy by the name of John Gentile, who is a career cop in Las Vegas, and he recently was part of a documentary film called Wrist Lock, and it's about police martial arts in police training and procedures. A really interesting documentary film, and he and the director were discussing essentially the fact that a lot of police departments and officers themselves, they kind of look at the hand-to-hand training as a one and done. Like they get their training initially in an academy or whatever, and then they don't maintain it. Is that something that maybe that kind of concept kept you involved in martial art as you were a law enforcement officer, seeing the value of trying to keep this up, or was it really more something that you were just enjoying doing?
No, I'm at the point that I was sold on it from the very beginning, and I really can't tell you why. And I've been doing it for 55 years now, and I'll be doing some form of martial arts for the rest of my life. I cannot conceive of a time when I was not. Um, that being said, the training in martial arts has benefited me enormously, and a lot of people think that, well, that's because of the techniques that you learn, right? It's not really it. Police officers tend to get in trouble when they either overreact or underreact to a situation, right? They overreact, and now they've got a brutality charge and they're sitting in IA, or they underreact and they get hurt. And the thing that happens is that stress overwhelms their ability to make rational, real-time decisions. There's a Japanese word, fudoshin, which means immovable mind. And it's that I used to call it, I drop into the pocket. When things start to head south, I center. I drop my shoulders. My breathing evens out, and that's when the martial arts really benefits me the most. I mean, I've okay, so I had this one situation where I had a suspicious person call at 24-hour stop and run.
And this concludes the abbreviated version of the Martial Arts Lifestyle Podcast. Please click the like and subscribe buttons as well as the notification bell. Also consider subscribing to the full-length podcast at www.patreon.com/malmag or purchasing individual full-length episodes at malmag.gumroad.com. Thank you for listening to this episode with Steve Holley. Coming up next week, we have St. Louis-based martial artist and school teacher Matt Stump. Check out the Malmag store at www.martialartslifestylemagazine.com and click on the store tab. There, you will find a full selection of Timmy B's brand sticks for FMA and Krabi Krabong, as well as Timmy B's and Dos Manos t-shirts. Many more products coming soon. Also click on our courses tab to purchase online courses, right now featuring a course in the Dos Manos stick of FMA. More courses to come. This show is produced by Martial Arts Lifestyle Magazine. Visit us at www.martialartslifestylemagazine.com and enjoy the free version of our online magazine with articles, a recommended schools page, and a worldwide events calendar. Music by Jack Al Relic. Martial Arts Lifestyle Magazine and the Martial Arts Lifestyle Podcast are trademarked and copyrighted by TNT LLC.